Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Red Rose Recovery podcast / YouTube video. The raw, the real, the truth. And today I have with me long-time friend, bishop and author, Mick Fleming.
Thanks for having me, Roland. Good to see you.
Thanks for coming in, bro.
No, thank you.
So really, I wanted to get Mick's a bit of an interesting and colourful character, not just his shirt, but a colourful character in his history. And I hoped we could talk about that a little bit, Mick.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So I guess a good starting point from my perspective would be, can you tell us a little bit about little Mick?
Oh, blimey, Roland, yeah. So I think little Mick, he started off very happy.
Yeah.
Good family, really good family, nice background. Church every Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess the things that changed were led by trauma. So there was sexual assault and the death of my sister within like a 24-hour period. And that was like something changed, something kind of, obviously it would, but it was like mental and spiritual and also physical. Something happened to me. Within all that, I was a completely different person.
Okay.
And that literally began my first experience with drugs, which I knew nothing about, and they were painkillers.
Okay.
So it was like my mum had a bad back.
Yeah.
And I don't even know to this day why at that young age I would go and take these tablets, because I knew nothing of drugs.
Can I ask how old that was, Mick?
11
years old, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I took DF118s. That's how I can remember them. You know, that's kind of.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of the older viewers will understand what that is.
Maybe.
And I took them and I laid on this bed, and all the pain went away, and it was like I floated out of my body, and it felt like I'd found God.
Wow.
And it was an amazing experience. I'm saying it now, it was an amazing experience. The problem was that when I came back to reality, it was even worse.
Yeah.
So I kind of spent the next, it was about 32 years, kind of chasing that really and trying to process and understand and just progress through drugs and violence and anger, all this trauma just exploding out of me and trying to work out the world, which I hated. I hated the world, I didn't like reality.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be away from it. And, do you know what, Roland? Some days I still do.
Yeah. So you found solace in drugs? Or the sensation of being drugged up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah. And then, as I said before, we know each other a little bit, don't we? And I met you, I think it must have been probably about 2010.
Yeah, about 14, 15 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, we're getting on a bit. Yeah. And at that point, you were coming into recovery, weren't you? Can you tell us a little bit about maybe how or why that started to happen?
So my drug of choice was always ended up being crack and alcohol. So I'd use the alcohol to kind of come down, but when I'd mixed the two, I always became mentally ill. Always. Right. So it become psychotic. So I got arrested on a firearms offence, and I didn't get charged, but within the interview it became apparent that I was seriously mentally ill.
Yes.
So they were reluctant to release me back into society, but they didn't have a holding charge or anything. So they got doctors to come and see me, and was sectioned under the Mental Health Act.
Right.
So whilst I was inside this psychiatric unit, I honestly felt, Roland, that for the first time in my life, I fit in. And it wasn't just because I was crazy. It was that I felt understood.
Yeah.
I didn't feel judged. And I'm talking about the patients, I'm not talking about the staff. And there's a guy came up to me, he's become a really good friend of mine now. He's still in and out, unfortunately, of mental health systems. But he told me about his abuse when he was little. And I never heard any other man ever in my life say it. And I didn't feel by myself with it. And there was something about that. And then there was like a nun that used to come in, and she's this little woman about this big. And at the time, I was big, I was strong, I was dangerous I looked bad, and I was insane. So it was a bad combination. So people at that point were staying away from me. And this little lady had come up and Jesus loves and I used to think, why is she not scared of me? She's 2 foot tall.
Yeah.
She's not, and I used to like try to work it out why I didn't feel aggression towards her. One, and the second thing, why she wasn't afraid, and that kind of started to sort of build my curiosity towards some kind of faith, some kind of something. So when I came out of the psychiatric unit, I was clean for the first time for years and years. Well, I can't remember. I think probably ever.
Yeah.
And it was like I ended up in a homeless hostel, and the pride in me was so big because I'd had a lot of money through doing bad things. I didn't want anyone to see me skin, and that was the biggest pain, bigger than anything, bigger than any kind of trauma or anything. The biggest pain I felt at that time sober was people will think that I've got no.
Yeah.
And I can remember this worker inside this homeless hostel said, your gyro's coming, because I've never been on dole. Because I'd always, if I needed money, just go and took somebody else's. So I never needed to sort of, and I got this gyro for 90 quid. And I thought, how am I going to manage on £90 a week? And they went, no, that's for 2 weeks. And I was like, off. So the realisation started to kick in pretty rapid that life had definitely took a dive. And I ended up through, it's quite a long story, which I won't go into. It's written in that book, but if anybody wants to know about it, but I ended up outside this meeting that I didn't really know were a meeting, and somebody who were working in the homeless hostel came and took me into this meeting, and it was an NA meeting, and I didn't know about recovery properly. Didn't fully understand, and I went in there and I thought, oh wow, it was like walking into the psychiatric unit for the first time, probably.
Yeah.
But I felt I fit in.
A sense of belonging.
Oh yeah, I'm like, wow. I didn't know there were places like this where, people could. All my friends that use drugs die.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was like recovery that meant that you didn't need to die, because that's what recovery is to me. Real recovery is I actually don't need to die, and that was something that had a big effect on me. I saw people like you that were a little bit further down the line at the time, and I can remember just feeling like I was clean, sober, but it felt like someone had stuck a meat hook into the pit of my stomach and they were slowly ripping it apart. And it was horrendous. And all I wanted to do was have a drink or take a drug to get that. I knew it would take me back. It doesn't work.
No.
It stopped working, and I knew it didn't, but that feeling. And I can remember talking to you once and meeting up with you and expecting you to have this wise wisdom and this magic book that you'd open and say, here, mate, let's look at chapter 2. And all this sparkly dust had come out of it, this light had shined. You went, let's have a brew and walk around charity shops. And I was like, he's mental. What's that going to do for me?
Yeah.
And when we'd finished and I was going, I felt better.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is that about? And I've realised over the years it was my connection to another human being that understood me. Regardless whether they liked me, regardless whether they cared, they understood. And there was something about that. The word love's thrown about too much. It doesn't have to be love. It has to be, I understand you.
Yeah.
I can empathise with another human being. Love can come later, because I couldn't love, you know what I mean? I didn't care, to be honest, at that point. But other people were starting to care for me. And that was that. I think, like, not to underrate, so I know we've talked before about that, when I met you and we went for a brew, that was probably the single most important part of my recovery to that date and that place and that time. And it was so simple.
Yeah.
And you probably thought you were doing nothing, but it changed my life.
Yeah. Well, at that time, I would just, half the time, I'd be cruising charity shops and sitting in coffee shops judging people just because I had nothing else to do, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
It was funny because when you talked about it, I saw you at an event recently, and you saw me in the audience and you mentioned that, and I barely remembered it. And we were talking about like the importance it had for you. Whereas at the time, I was just doing what I did, what I was trying to do to stay clean myself.
It seems there's something about perspective, isn't there? I think with addiction, and certainly with me and a lot of people I know, I'm sure it's not a blanket, this, what I'm going to say, but I have the ability to zoom in really well and see the details, but I struggle with the ability to zoom back out.
Bigger picture.
It takes me a lot longer to come back out, because it's about me, and I want to stay there a bit too long sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think the recovery that I've got now is more about I'm learning still how to zoom back out and see that bigger picture.
Cool.
And I didn't have that then.
Yeah.
But but obviously I've grown into that, and I can see that now. It's I think people don't realise that a touch of kindness, even when you can't be bothered, it has such a real power. You don't know. And that for me was a real strong beginning of some kind of thing that's spiritual, because it was beyond, how can that make a difference? It's nothing, but yet it did, and a profound difference. So that to me was a type of understanding of something that was spiritual. So not of me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Like a powerful learning experience.
Yeah. Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. And then because I was able to, I've done that for other people, and it makes me smile sometimes. It's like someone's a bit off their head or struggling a bit, and blah blah blah, and it's been, come on, let's just go and have a brew, and really simple, and it has an effect on them.
Cool.
It's so surprising, and also it's the most unlikely dynamics that you see and feel the more power. So if you're in recovery longer than someone who's just walked through the door, there's a dynamic. You might not put that dynamic there, but it's there.
Yeah.
So when you go with somebody who's new or fresh or really struggling and speak to them and sit down with them, there's a leveling up that's very, very powerful. And that's what happened with me. And that's what I try to do. It taught me something as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Good. And can you tell me a little bit about, obviously, because now you're a pastor, you're actually a bishop.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's a courtesy or not, if I'm honest. But so you've progressed into theology, Christianity. So how did that go? You were attending mutual aid meetings, NA, as you described, and started some of the process there. How did you come to the point where you thought, this is where I want to go?
I had a moment once, Roland, when I was homeless, that kind of still affects me now. So it was this stint of me using, with many different stints and times, but at this point I'd become homeless again.
Yeah.
And so we were going to have to sleep rough this particular night, and it were winter, and I just had a t-shirt on. And I were in a church, found a church, and I'm in this church, and they made me a brew and gave me some biscuits. And they were really lovely people.
Yeah.
But I knew they wanted me out the door. Now, there's no wrong with that, because I had to go. The thing was, I knew they didn't want me there.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I was trying to stay. I knew and I felt that they didn't want me. And it was true. And I know it was true, because they had to go home and live their own lives, and that's fine. But I felt it internally. And when I came out of the church, I heard the door shut and bolt behind me, which is fine, but I heard it and I felt it. And I went across the road, and I didn't know where I'm going to keep that night. I had no cover or jacket or all. And there's a guy in a shop doorway, side of a pub. He went, "Here, come here." And I went over, and I was rattling bad. I was rattling bad for a drink, more than anything. And he said, "Where are you sleeping?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Here, sit down." I sat down next to him and he put his sort of like cover around me, and then he had like a beanie hat. He took it off and he put it on my head. And then for 45 minutes, Roland, honestly, he poured his own cider into my mouth.
Yeah.
Until I just started to come back.
Right.
And then he rolled a fag, put it in my mouth and lit it for me. And I met Jesus in a shop doorway.
Wow.
Because he didn't live in that church.
Oh.
And that was an understanding. So I have a theological understanding that grew in me from that point on.
Yeah.
Of who is this Jesus figure? Because he don't live there. I don't see stained glass windows feeding children. Do you know what I mean? And it's not there isn't a place for that. It's just that it's not my place.
Yeah.
And it was something about justice and mercy and to be proactive, not just from me, but from this faith perspective that I saw changed me, but I'd also seen it changing other people. And I got this notion, which I think's quite an old AA notion, but I had it, and it was like, who is Jesus? And it was honesty, unselfishness, purity, and love. And I thought there's very few people that could argue that, because that's the characteristics of God, according to me.
Yeah.
Example.
Your interpretation.
My interpretation of it. And I thought, you couldn't really argue that that's a better way to live your life. And I call that Jesus. And that's the traits that I see in the character, the story, the Gospels, everything in the Bible. I see that character traits. So if I'm helping people in the recovery and everything, I want them to become more honest, more unselfish, more pure, and more loving, because that's the antidote for me. That's what
spiritual principles, isn't it?
Yeah. And that sort of led me to go into study. So to become ordained, you have to have a degree in theology.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even spell it. But I blagged my way in, because I've been a good blagger all my life. You know, and I know we can get what we want. We'll survive. We always will, you know. And I blagged my way in to Manchester University, but a Christian section of Manchester University. And so I'm on this degree course. And to get through the first year of your degree, to get 40%. You got 40%, you could go on and do the second and third year and get your degree. And I got 17%. So 40% were to be bad.
Yeah.
I got 17. So I failed. And they said to me, Mick, you can't read and write properly, can you? And I said, no. They said, well, how did you think you were going to do a degree? And I said, well, I thought Jesus had helped me. And they laughed. And I thought, well, I did think that.
Yeah.
And I still do. And they said, we're going to test you, get you tested. So I got tested for dyslexia, dyspraxia, and something called Herland syndrome, which helps me I couldn't process light properly and things like that. So that was a large part of my reading and understanding and comprehension skills. So I'm seeing different things, kind of distorted images and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I got the lenses. So these lenses, I'm not trying to be the vicar of Sicker or like that. These really help massive. And I picked this, once I got them, I picked this book up and I was like, no way. Yeah. I could read properly. And I was even reading sauce bottles. I was reading everything I could, and I'm soaking it all up. So I continued with my degree. I had to retake the first year, so I had to do it again. And I ended up and I got a really good degree.
Yeah.
I wasn't stupid like I've been told all my life.
No.
So the school, the teachers, everywhere I went, so they'd say I was stupid, so I'd pick a chair up and throw it at them, get thrown out of class, And I had this moment where you're not stupid.
Yeah.
You're just being measured in a way that don't work for you.
Yeah.
And I think this is where I come back to recovery to say that there's lots of different ways of understanding recovery.
Yes.
And it's what works for you. And sometimes you've got to explore that. And sometimes it develops and change. And then sometimes you've got to go back to what did work because that didn't. And you know what? That's all right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing is like, I don't do many meetings. I do the odd one or two now, 12-step type meetings. Not a lot. But if I felt I needed to, I'd be there every day.
Yeah, you know
I'm
where
fine.
to go.
I know where to go.
Yeah.
But I know me and I know what I need to do and how I need to serve, and I find a way that works for me, and it changes. My world has changed, and the space I put myself in invites other people in to change as well. And that's, I'm happy with that. And they can do what they need to do recovery wise. It's not, you know, I'm not a believer anymore after 15 years of, I was very staunch NA, very, very, very staunch because it worked so well for me. But I'm not now. It's an option.
Yeah.
And it's a good option.
Yeah, yeah.
But if somebody pulls away from that, you know, it doesn't mean that they failed. And you know, there's many ways to recover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing with this is, Mick, is I could talk to you for hours, but the truth of it is time's
catching up.
Yeah, it catches up with us. If it's okay, I'd like to leave it there. Can
Perfect.
I just ask you to tell people where they can find you if they want to talk to you, if that's okay?
Yeah. So you can find us at Church on the Street, and there's a website, and you can contact us there. There's loads of recovery stuff and loads of other different stuff, and it's just all about social justice and helping people to move forward in life.
Cool.
So thanks, Ron. Thanks, that's been great.
Nice one, dude. And your book is called Blown Away.
It's called Blown Away. Yeah, you can get it on Amazon. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Not bad for someone who wants it a shop doorway, man.
I know, not bad at all, is it?
Yeah. Beautiful.
Nice
cool.
One. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Mick. Thank you, everyone.